Hello, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV. So I just thought I could talk a little bit about safety now, just so that we've got it covered. The first thing being, when is it not safe for you to go out sailing? The first thing to consider, of course, is the conditions. So this might be if the wind is too strong, or perhaps if the combination of the wind, maybe the tide or the sea state makes it unsafe. So if the waves are extremely large, or perhaps just larger than you know how to deal with, then it could be unsafe to go out. If the wind is just too strong, then it could be safe to go out. Or perhaps if you're in a place where there is a lot of tide and your skills are not up to sailing in that amount of tide, then that would be a poor choice to go out in the first place. If there is some sort of safety cover in place, then it does give you a bit of a boost in the conditions where you can feasibly go out sailing and it be safe. So if you've got a safety boat, then perhaps it means you can go out sailing in maybe 10 knots more than you would be safe to go out in without safety cover. The two main concerns, if there isn't safety cover while you're out sailing, is firstly, if your mast comes down and there's nobody to tow you back in, then you'll probably live, but you could be on the boat for a very, very long time drifting, which brings up another safety consideration, is if the wind is offshore. Because if the wind is blowing away from the shore and your mast comes down, then how are you going to get back in unless there is somebody to tow you back? Keep this in mind. The second big safety consideration, if you haven't got safety cover, or even if you have, is if you're sailing the boat solo and you fall off, proper man overboard situation, your boat is going to sail away from you. Or if it doesn't sail away from you, it will probably capsize. But then with the boat on its side, it's going to drift downwind, probably faster than you can swim, unless you're very good at swimming. So that is another safety consideration. With the man overboard, or for any safety situation, a good piece of equipment for you to have with you is a whistle. This only cost like €2, maybe 5 for a really good one, maybe 10 for a gold-plated one. But if you're in a situation where you've come away from your boat and perhaps people are looking for you, if it's windy, your voice shouting isn't going to carry very far, but a whistle can be heard for a very long distance. So it's well worth having a whistle in your buoyancy aid, so you always have that with you so that you can attract attention. Another time when it wouldn't be a good idea to go sailing is if there is some sort of adverse weather conditions, which might be just something as common as a thunderstorm. Sounds pretty obvious, but even if you're absolutely desperate to get out on the water, if there's the chance of an electrical storm, then really look at the forecast and make sure that that electrical storm isn't going to hit you while you're out sailing. But there might be other adverse weather conditions depending on where it is that you are in the world. So make sure you've got a good idea of the forecast before you go sailing. I'll carry on. So the other question is, what if you're sailing in a lot of tide? How do you deal with that? Because you could find yourself in a compromising situation quite quickly. Then if you're sailing in tide, it's kind of similar how you should approach it to if you are sailing amongst perhaps a lot of moored boats. So maybe you're sailing into a crowded mooring area and it's windy. If you are going to windward of an obstruction and there is a chance of capsize or something bad happening, then you really want to be putting the boat in the mode which is going to make the capsize or losing control of the boat as low a chance as possible, so that as you're passing to windward of something, then you're just taking any danger out of the equation as much as possible. So if perhaps you're sailing through some moored boats and there's the option to go to windward of a boat or to leeward of a boat, then going to leeward of the boat is going to be a much better choice if it is windy and there is a chance for capsize. Because the worst thing that can happen, whether it's tide or just strong wind, is capsizing in front of a moored boat and then drifting down onto that moored boat, and you or your boat could end up getting kind of dragged underneath. Bad time. The same if you're sailing in an area where there's traffic, perhaps there's a shipping lane, then never ever think that you can go around the front of a ship that is moving, because that ship, it can't stop. If you think, oh yeah, we can definitely make it round the front, and maybe you have something unexpected happen, such as a shroud break and your mast comes down, the ship isn't going to be able to alter course. It's going to run you down. Bad day all round there. So things that you could do to make it safer when you go sailing, especially if it's windy, is firstly, if you are thinking of going out solo, consider taking somebody else with you. That's going to make it a lot safer, especially if that second person is an experienced sailor. Even if they're not experienced, it can make it safer just having a second person there, get them briefed on what to do if you were to fall off the boat, and then at least they can take control of the boat and stop the boat by putting it into the wind, which means you've got a better chance of getting back to the boat. The second thing you can do to make it safer when you're going out sailing is consider reducing the amount of sail area. So if you've got the possibility to reef your boat, that is of course going to help. Or perhaps you've got the possibility to sail without the jib, as we demonstrated last week. That could be a good plan. But there are things that you could do to make it safer when you are going out. But definitely consider the conditions every time you go sailing. The last thing, of course, that could make it less safe when you go sailing is the condition of your boat. So do carry out essential boat checks before you go out. Check all the shackles are done up tightly and securely. When was the last time you either had your boat on its side or you dropped the mast and checked the shackle that holds all the rigging to the mast? Well worth doing, I think you'll find. Also checking the split rings that are holding the mast up at the bottom, making sure they're all taped on and there's nothing that can come undone. Put your bungs in. If your boat fills with water, that could be a bad time as well. So there's quite a few things that you could do to make your sailing experience safer, well worth considering. The final one, which is kind of a little bit unrelated, is consider wearing a helmet like this, because there's a lot of hard things on the boat which are a lot harder than your head. So wearing a helmet is going to stop you from, well, it's going to reduce the amount of risk if you hit something head first. I've just started wearing a helmet last year, in fact. Before last year, I never wore a helmet going sailing, but the year before last, I had a concussion and it was a horrible experience, one that I'd never like to repeat. So that really opened my eyes to the fact that I should be wearing a helmet when the wind is getting very strong, because it is dangerous. So there we go. If you want to get hold of a helmet like this one, check out the links in the video description below. And if you are in the US or you use Amazon.com, you can find a helmet the same as the one that I use by following that link. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and just stay safe out there, because stranger things have happened at sea and you never know what the sea is going to throw at you. But I think check your rigging on your boat before you go out the next time. If you do that, then you've just made your sailing experience 100% safer before you've even gone on the water. Thank you very much.